Oh, hey, welcome to another video. Greetings, y'all. Welcome to another video. Today, we're coming to you al fresca, as the fancy people say. Yeah, it's a nice day. I decided to come out here and do the video. I used to do a bunch of these outdoors, al fresca, but haven't done them in a while, and it was so nice today. I just couldn't help myself. But today we're talking about another Goodwill haul, pickup, whatever you want to call it. And I've been having some pretty good luck lately with Goodwill, surprisingly. Went on a little run there where I wasn't finding much, but lately the tides had turned. So let's dig in and see what I picked up at Goodwill this time. From 1997, we get Jackson Browne and his Best Of collection titled The Next Voice You Hear. The Next Voice You Hear is the new track that he included on this, as most people do when they're putting out Best Of collections. I don't know, that kind of started maybe in the mid 80s or something. I don't know that maybe they were doing it in the 70s as well, but you know, it certainly became like a thing you had to do when you were putting out a Best Of collection when it came to like the later 80s and the 90s. I don't even know if anybody puts out Best Of collections anymore, you know, because it just seems like that's kind of a thing of the past to a degree. But yeah, found this there. Not a big Jackson Browne fan. You know, he's of the rock, pop, Laurel Canyon school of music. And the funny thing was, when I found this at the Goodwill, there were probably 4 or 5 proper Jackson Browne albums there so I could have walked out with a whole Jackson Browne collection. But, you know, again, I've never been a big fan of his. Just, you know, there's a few of his songs that I like, and just thought picking up the Best Of was probably the way to go. All these were 99 cents in this Goodwill that I go to. But I grabbed it, and there's, you know, a handful of these songs I'm familiar with and I like. Doctor My Eyes, Running on Empty is really good. Somebody's Baby from Fast Times at Ridgemont High, I've always loved that song. Tender as the Night is another one that's pretty good. But the rest of them I wasn't familiar with, and there's surprisingly a handful of his songs that I am familiar with that aren't on here. That's really curious, you know, like Lawyers in Love I can think of as one that I know was a big hit for him, but surprisingly not on this album. But you know, I picked it up thinking, you know, maybe there are some other songs on here that that I had never heard of, that I'd kind of like undiscover some gems of his, but not so much. I mean, it's okay. The highlights of this are obviously the songs I mentioned, the ones I know. None of the other tracks really kind of caught my ear, but you know, still not a horrible purchase. From 1965, we get the Ventures Christmas album. Ventures, kind of like a surf rock pop band. I think there's still a version of this band that's around, still touring. I don't know, maybe there's like one original guy in it, or maybe there's no original guys on it. But I like surf music. Some of my favorite bands kind of play surf guitar. Agent Orange, the Sandals are a very popular surf band who did all the music for the Endless Summer. But I saw this there, and it was funny. I left it behind. You know, there's always tons of Christmas albums in Goodwill. But afterwards, I had watched a video by our friend Mark, Mad for Vinyl, who I'm sure you're all familiar with. You can check out his videos. But he had picked this up on vinyl recently, and I saw the video where he's talking about it, and it just kind of made me change my mind and think, you know, I should go back maybe and pick that up. So I went back. It was still there, luckily, and I grabbed it. And I'm really curious to hear this. I haven't listened to it yet. I'm not really one to listen to Christmas music when it's not Christmas time, so this one's gonna have to wait a little bit before I pop it in and take a listen. But you know, all the familiar tunes that you'd want are on here: Sleigh Ride, Santa Claus is Coming to Town, Jingle Bells, and on and on. From what I understand, I don't know if Mark mentioned this or if I read it somewhere else, they kind of put their own little cool spin on them. So yeah, really curious and interested to check this one out, but not until it's Christmas time. 1988, we get Susie and the Banshees and their album Peep Show. I like Susie a lot. I've always liked her voice. I have 2 Best Of collections by her, Once Upon a Time and Twice Upon a Time, and even though I've always liked them, I never owned any of their albums, and I've had those best ofs for a long time, and I don't know, they just always seem to like kind of be enough. They kind of covered the ground for me, you know. But saw this there at Goodwill, 99 cents, and just couldn't pass it up, you know. Just really curious to listen to like a full album by them. And I remember when this record came out, it was pretty popular. I remember Peekaboo being on the radio quite a bit. Killing Jar's another one I think I kind of remember, but the rest of it I'm really not familiar with. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to, you know, finally listening to one of their albums. 2001, we get Ben Folds and Rockin' the Suburbs just like John Bon Jovi did. You didn't think I was going to sing for you today, did you? Well, I did. How about that? A little extra for you today. Ben Folds, of course, from Ben Folds 5. Know quite a bit of his stuff, you know, alternative, rock, pop stuff. He always had kind of like pretty humorous lyrics in his songs. And, you know, knew a handful of those songs from the radio. They got a good amount of airplay on college and alternative radio, but never really had any desire to pick up any of his albums. And saw this there at Goodwill, and, you know, he's one of those, it's one of those records where you're kind of, when you find it at Goodwill, you're kind of surprised because it's not obscure or anything, but it's just not one of those artists you regularly find at Goodwill. So when you see something like this there, it kind of takes you back for a minute, you know, and you're like, oh, no kidding. And yeah, I mean, like 99 cents, why not grab it? The title track, Rockin' the Suburbs, I always loved that. I remember when it first came out, the video especially was constantly on Much Music. We would get Much Music back then, and I remember seeing that video all the time. Perhaps Brian, our friend Brian, the embryonic robot, or Jack up in Canada maybe could back me up on that Rockin' the Suburbs was on Much Music a lot. But I listened to this record, and Rockin' the Suburbs is obviously the highlight. Nothing else really stood out. You know, it's okay. 1986, we get Laurie Anderson and her album Home of the Brave. This is actually a soundtrack to a film she put out called Home of the Brave back then. I've always been aware of Laurie Anderson, but I can't say that I've ever heard anything by her. She's, you know, kind of a avant-garde experimental artist. She's on Warner Brothers, which is pretty surprising. You know, it's kind of like back then I feel like that wasn't that obscure to find like major labels kind of have acts like this on their roster, you know, acts like this that weren't selling millions of albums. It's just that the label believed in the artist, or just there was something about them, you know, and it kind of would you know, sign these artists. I don't know that that really happens anymore, but she was one of those artists. Like, I don't think she ever had major hits or anything, but, you know, you certainly were aware of her. And like I said, I'd never heard any of her music. Saw this in Goodwill. Very odd to find one of her records in Goodwill, like I was kind of saying about Ben Folds. You know, this is not an artist that you expect to find in Goodwill. You expect to find Elton John. You expect to find John Cougar Mellencamp. You expect to find Sarah McLachlan. You don't expect to find Laurie Anderson. So I saw it there. And the thing about this is I didn't know any of her music, knew of her or whatever, but I do remember when this came out. I used to buy Billboard magazine a lot back then, and I remember the ads for this for some reason. They just kind of seared in my brain, but never made me want to, like, you know, investigate her music or anything like that. But I just do remember seeing these ads, and something about it just kind of, you know, caught my eye. But so when I saw it there, you know, I think it took me 4 or 5 trips to Goodwill to finally decide to pick this up. Like, I'd go there and it'd be there, and I'd pick it up and look at it and be like, I don't know, and I'd put it back. And I did that like 4 or 5 times, and then finally I was there, and I just said, you know what, F it, I'm gonna buy it, 99 cents, whatever. And I picked it up, and, you know, I gotta be honest, surprisingly, when I got home and I popped it in and listened to it, I kind of dug it. I kind of enjoyed this, you know. It definitely is not for everyone. It's kind of a little weird, a little avant-garde, experimental, but I liked it, you know, I really did. I don't know that it's made me want to run out and pick up any of her other stuff or anything, but you know, it paid off. I was surprisingly, you know, happy with this purchase. Really good, you know. I'd have to look around and see if the film is streaming anywhere, because I'd kind of be curious now to see the film. If you've seen the film, let me know by all means. But yeah, that's everything I picked up this time at Goodwill. Some interesting stuff. But thank you for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the scenery, and we'll see you another time later on.